evening. You're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, as details of India's operation in Myanmar emerge, the government says it's a warning to all countries harbouring terrorists, including Pakistan. Islamabad has responded strongly this evening. Can and should these cross-border ops really be seen as a warning to Pakistan and to China? Are the situations comparable? Also tonight, the fight between Chandrababu Naidu and K. Chandrasekhar Rao intensifies. It's CM versus CM. What's the end game? And the new Central Vigilance Commissioner speaks to NDTV, says there was nothing inappropriate about his meetings with the ex-CBI chief, Ranjit Sinha. That interview coming up in about 30 minutes from now. But first, the inside story of India's surgical strike inside Myanmar is becoming much clearer now, including why the operation was delayed by a day. The planning began about 5 days ago when National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the Army Chief both cancelled their scheduled engagements to camp in Manipur following the ambush in which 18 Jawans were killed.
Post-midnight, early on Tuesday morning, the operation began. The targets were 2 terrorist camps. 2 sets of Indian Army commandos crossed the border in army choppers. They were dropped off just a couple of kilometers across the border. The commandos then walked to the terror camps and the attack began at 3 a.m. The main ops lasted 45 minutes.
National Security Advisor Ajit Doval cancelled his trip to Bangladesh, while the Chief of Army Staff too did not go to United Kingdom. Both rushed to Manipur.
Sources say the intelligence was cutting edge and it made the ops possible. The targets were terror groups of the northeast. Sources believe about 100 terrorists were killed, mostly in the Onjia camp. Both camps are estimated to have had about 150 terrorists.
This is not the last strike. More such raids are expected. India is determined. It wants to send a strong message to the militants who operate here and also to China, who India believes have helped these groups come together under one umbrella. With Barkha Dutt and camera person Manoj, Shudhiranjan Sen for NDTV.
Meanwhile, Union Minister Rajyavardhan Singh Rathor's statement that this strike is a warning to all countries harbouring terrorists, including Pakistan, has drawn a sharp response from Pakistan's military that's called it Indian hostile rhetoric coupled with covert and overt actions to destabilize Pakistan. They went on to say they'll defend the territorial integrity at any cost with a befitting response to any misadventure. Meanwhile, the army commander on the ground in the Kashmir Valley says you can't really compare the Myanmar ops to the situation along the line of control.
Even if there are groups within a country that harbour terror intentions, we will choose the time and place of hitting them.
What action we take, what response we do, that is quite clearly related to the operational circumstances in which they happen.
Indian Army has never said in its statement yesterday that the Indian Army entered into Myanmar. It was Rajyavardhan Singh Rathor only in his tweet that he has said so. Such things should never be politicized.
Well, the question is whether the situations are comparable, whether this really can be seen as a warning to Pakistan and indeed to China, as some reports have been suggesting over the last 24 hours or so. We have Ambassador K.C. Singh joining us on the show once again this evening. Also, GVL Rao, spokesperson of the BJP, and Lieutenant General R.K. Sani, former Deputy Chief of Army Staff. General Sani, to get you in, sir, first. How do you look at the minister's statement, in terms of a warning to other countries? Do you think it can really be a comparable situation, to compare what we've done in Myanmar to, say, the situation along the LOC?
I think it's an indication of the intent of the government. It is to tell the terrorists and those harbouring them that we will not take this lying down. And should this be sort of taking place elsewhere, there is a strong possibility that we may replicate what we have done here. No, this is not a threat. I think this is an exhibition of the political will. No, I'd like to tell you, Nidhi, political will is a very important ingredient of the comprehensive national power. You see, in the end of the day, it is that this will which propels and kick-starts a process wherein we can take action against those who have acted not in our interests, especially these terrorists. So I would say it's an indication, it's a signal, it's a announcement of intention.
I think those are very important points. Yeah, as you say, you believe it's an exhibition of political will. You don't see it as a threat, but a signal certainly of where the political will stands. And I'll take that to Ambassador K.C. Singh first.
Exactly.
Ambassador Singh, as some commentators have said today, operations have happened in the past as well. But what makes this different has perhaps been the speed and the swiftness with which this was done, literally days after that ambush had taken place, killing Indian soldiers. Would you say that that's what makes this operation stand apart?
Well, two things. Firstly, yes, as an operation, it's a successful operation, well conducted and quickly approved by the government. But the second thing is whether chest thumping is correct or not. I think it's uncalled for, completely uncalled for, because those who have to draw their lessons will draw their lessons from this. You don't have to point it out. They are not stupid. People around India, the other countries and groups, they are not silly. They know exactly what this means. And a responsible and confident part does not go around explaining what you have done. It is understood. What we've done is understood. We have the capability. And each situation will be different. It does not apply automatically to every country. Chinese are not directly doing anything in India. They would, if they are doing anything at all, it will be very indirect. So there's no question of responding to China. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it will be entirely different, whether you go across line of control or the international border. Line of control is entirely different ball game. International border is yet another one. But that's a nuclear weapon state. So you have to be prepared for escalation. It may escalate, may not escalate. And remember, the main concern US had when they went after Osama in Abbottabad was that the Pakistanis may think the Indians are conducting a raid and escalate or start something with Indians. So that was their main concern. So we have to be careful. It doesn't mean you can't do it vis-a-vis a limited operation vis-a-vis Pakistan, but there's no need to put your cards on the table. Like for instance, cold start. We started talking about it, and Pakistan immediately reacted by developing tactical nuclear weapons. They go into a counter reaction based simply on some articulation from India.
I want to take that to Major,
is then counterproductive.
I'll take that to Major General Rahul Athief, well-known defense analyst who joins us tonight from Lahore. Major General Athief, how do you look at this? I mean, we've seen a very sharp reaction from Pakistan's military on this, but certainly, what General Sani was talking about in terms of a political will that it signals on the Indian government's part, that it is going to look at these incidents differently perhaps and from a different prism, and certainly the Prime Minister here would look at these things from a different prism. How has that message been received in Pakistan?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I look at it from a different angle altogether. We call it, and India also calls it Aman Ki Aisha. Aman Ki Aisha does not indicate that there should be provocation from one country to the other and from other country to back to the first country. This should not be the case. If it's Aman Ki Aisha, then it is not fair to conduct something which can provoke the other party. When you talk about the provocation, well, provocation can be very grievous. After all, when we talk of a relationship between India and Pakistan, we have to decide, do we want to live in peace, or do we want to live under the umbrella of war all the time, or threat of war all the time? If you want to live in peace, I think there is no requirement of indicating that if there are terrorists in Pakistan and Indian troops can cross over the international border and come and start killing the terrorists. How do they identify these terrorists? I think let us not try to lay an example what the Americans have done. The Americans have done it, and the Americans have also decided as it is. It was during Bush time, or even also the present, the Obama's time, that they have indicated that wherever there is somebody who is threatening the United States of America, we'll go in for that. Well, it's a superpower. They are doing it. But I'm sure they'll be very, very careful when they find that the other side also has similar weapon state. as they have.
But General Athief,
So
what you say makes sense, because, you know, as Ambassador KC Singh was also pointing out, these are very different circumstances. Pakistan has nuclear weapons, so do we. Obviously, the circumstances are very different. My question is whether in Pakistan this is being viewed as a shift, you know, in terms of a security doctrine by the Modi government. You know, is this being seen, you know, as a shift from the previous position that there is going to be a political will to act if necessary?
No, I'm afraid in Pakistan it is being taken as a threat to Pakistan that the Indian Prime Minister have made a statement, and this statement should not have been made like this, that it is to threaten Pakistan for what? I think if we want to live in peace, then I'm afraid we have to adopt those methods, those procedures which will help us to gain peace in this region. Let us not talk about it that the government, what do you mean by having something which is your national aim or national mission or whatever it is. That's not a problem. The problem is the two countries are two sovereign countries. It should not be mixed. You know what happened in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. After all, with the 9 infantry divisions, that place was raided and attacked by the Indian troops.
Well,
if you're going to live in that state, then both the countries...
That's a separate issue. But I'll just take this to the BJP's GVL Rao. That Mr. Rao, you know, should there have been any sort of comparison made at all then? Because Myanmar is a different ball game. It's a friendly country. You know, they have been cooperating with us on the anti-terror front. You know, countries like Pakistan are, you know, on a completely different sphere. Can we compare the two situations, Mr. Rao?
Let us not let us talk about...
yes, sir. So, General Athief, I'll just get Mr. Rao to comment on that. Yes.
Yeah, Nidhi, I think what we have communicated yesterday was the will of the political establishment of the government in New Delhi, and the clarity of the Prime Minister that we shall not brook any nonsense. And India is no longer a soft state. You cannot mess up with our security forces. You cannot mess up with the lives of our citizens and not expect an equally proportionate response from the Indian side. I think that message has gone out loud and clear, and this was the avenging of the attack on our armed forces. The killing of our armed forces was met with a very firm and solid response, and therefore a message goes out to the people who want to indulge in similar practices. And in the last 1 year, Prime Minister has established himself. The Indian government also is being seen internationally as an important power player. And the manner in which we have rescued Indians from very difficult conditions, be it in Iraq, Yemen, and we have even helped other countries to rescue their citizens. I think it had established India's ability to, and also India's commitment to ensure the safety, security of our own countrymen, our armed forces, and shows
Rao,
our commitment towards our national security.
With countries like Pakistan, which have nuclear weapons, it's a very different ball game. Talking about surgical strikes, you know, the way we have done in Myanmar is a little difficult, isn't it?
I think these are matters of detail, which I think only our armed forces, defense establishment, and the national security establishment are privy to. But the commitment of the government of India, the commitment of the Prime Minister has been amply demonstrated by the surgical strikes yesterday. And whether in what context, at what time, in what situation a similar strikes can be inflicted is something a matter of detail, and I'm not really privy to such details.
I think that's a fair
nor
point.
I think it is an appropriate. It's not an appropriate point to discuss as of today.
Well, I've got Praveen Swami, Strategic Affairs Editor of the Indian Express, also here with us in the studios. Praveen, you know the background to this. It's not like India hasn't, you know, done, you know, crossed the line of control and done things on the other side of the border before. But why do you believe that these comparisons, you know, are troublesome to make in a sense?
Look, the circumstances in Myanmar are obviously different to those on many of our other borders. You have a government that's cooperative and friendly, with whom you have agreements signed in 2004 and even earlier on security cooperation. and which has cooperated very closely with us on tackling insurgency on several occasions in the past. Pakistan's obviously a different ballgame. Terrorist groups there have the support of the state. It's a formidable state that has substantial air defense and military capacities. The risk of escalation is enormous. The circumstances are obviously vastly different. And, you know, I think to talk casually about these things, as some people have been, is doing a great disservice, because these decisions are not decisions to be taken casually. They involve the lives of our soldiers and potentially of very large numbers of civilians too.